I want everyone to welcome Steve Gray. In my opinion, one of the most successful businessmen I've met. And with all the stuff that you're doing, you're part of the .com back in 1997 and 2000. You were starting online in 2002. So you started as affiliate also, WoW affiliate on ClickBank, and launched your own offer. And then you had your do-it-yourself solar panel offer. And then Primal, which is what I know you from.
First off, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's exciting to be here, and I'm happy to chat about anything. I listed some of those items. Do you want me to start in any place particular, or?
What is the .com? Like it says you're part of the .com. What is that? I'm not too.
Yeah, I'll start there. I think I listed it because when people ask about my story, I think that's kind of where it started. I was 19 at the time, and I use it in the self-development space, in the e-com space, online marketing. You got people thinking about what you want and your mental state and manifesting or creating your reality, right? Because sometimes in life you don't know necessarily what your path is, and then you find it and you're like, oh my gosh, that was just magical.
Yeah.
And so that was one of those experiences for me. I don't know how I had this idea. I was like 18, and who at 18 says, I'm going to go work for somebody and they're going to give me a part of their business and I'm going to have shares and that's what I want to do. So I started like looking for opportunities. And at the time I was actually doing some computer consulting. That's kind of where I got into skills, was from the IT side. And so I was doing this work, and I was taking college classes at night down at ACC, right there on the Rio Grande campus, right? And I was taking courses down there. And this guy at the time, he was a day trader. He's like, oh, I'm making so much money trading stocks. And I was like, oh, I want to learn how to do that, right? Because it was a fast path to money. And so I started looking at things and trying to figure out what's this day trading stuff. And there was a 2 blocks up from that ACC campus was a building that had a block trading office there. And one night I decided I'm just going to go see what's going on. So I walk up to the building after hours. The block trading's closed. And then for whatever reason, I try the door next door, and the door next door is open. And I go in, and these two guys are sitting there programming, Rich and Brad. And they look at me like, who the hell are you? And what are you doing here? And I explained, hey, I was just this. I'm trying to figure this out. Anyway, Brad was the number 2 employee. Rich was the number 3 employee at CyberCorp. Then Greg, who I hadn't met yet, was number 4, and I ended up being number 5. So I ended up meeting Philip. Philip is the founder of CyberCorp at the time. And he had been in financial, fintech, Forex trading, et cetera. And he had this idea to start making trading software. And that's what we called CyberTrader. So when I started in late 97, we had a software product that actually showed what we know now. Like you can see, it's called level 2, the market maker data, who's buying and selling and all that. That was very like cutting edge at the time. Yeah. And there was a desk at the trading floors that the trader would sit on one side of the desk and the broker would sit on the other side of the desk. And so if you're the broker and I'm the trader, I'm sitting there saying, buy Dell, sell Dell, buy Microsoft, whatever. And you're actually entering the orders and executing it. That's how it was done. Mm-hmm. And then what started happening is the ability for what we now know as day trading, the connections to the exchanges, the SOS, which was small orders execution system, that was NASDAQ, and you had SelectNet, which was NASDAQ, and you had connection to the NYSE, et cetera. We brought all that into our data center there at Rio Grande with all the routers and computers and servers and everything. And we basically became an online brokerage. And we signed up customers, had a sales team. They onboarded the customer, signed them up, and then the customers connected to us, usually through, if you remember what ISDN lines were and T1s, DSL stuff, like late 90s. So when I started in 1997, 5th person in the company, we did like 9,000 in revenue. 3 years later, we were doing 180 million a year, and we got bought by Schwab. So it was this explosive, crazy rocket ship ride. And I always talk about it because I learned so much about business success and how to do things right during that experience. And, a lot of it is, I was listening to actually one of the other podcasts that Che shared with me, and you were talking with a guy that had been in the industry for a while, and he was kind of giving copywriters a hard time because they're like, I'm only making 10,000 a month. And he's like, well, how much are you working? And they're like, oh, I'm working 2 hours a day. And he's like, well, stop being a lazy ass, right? It's cliche, but 90%, 95% of success is just showing up. So point is, I learned a lot about that, a lot about business, a lot about what worked, about moving fast. iterating quickly, executing as fast as possible, and all the things that we do in direct response to move offers forward and grow business, et cetera. Long story short, I lost all the money. I ended up with like $3 million or $4 million in stock options. I went back to school, finished my degree, ended up, it was one of those things, being 22, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I'd only seen markets go up. I had leveraged my stock with margin, bought more stock, and the market started going the other way, and I didn't know what to do. And over a period of years, I lost basically everything. It was about a year and a half to 2 years, went from 3 million to 700,000 to 300,000, and it was gone. Like we just lived on it, and it was gone. I'm sure you've had it in your life. You look back on it, and that was a really big learning lesson. Like it was a really big silver lining on how to move forward and do better. And there's so many lessons that I take and have taken from that I apply to business and everything now. So that's kind of the backdrop. And when I finished my degree, I got this auto dialer call, and I knew it was MLM. I just didn't know what it was. And it ended up being Herbalife. That is how I actually got into online marketing. I was at an event in Vegas. I never did much with like the business, but I did learn. It was my first introduction to direct response. They would do lead gen through what they call fax blasts or email or cold callers or some auto dialers, right? And people that would respond, they'd send out basically a sales letter and this little booklet through the mail. And then you would book a call with the person, and then you would close them because it was like a sales letter sales process. And so they were using direct response to recruit people. So that was my first like introduction to it. I was like, oh, this is really cool. You don't have to like talk to people at the grocery store. You know how most MLM stuff is done, like person to person and face to face. Like I said, I never actually did anything great with the business, but I learned how to do e-commerce through it because I was at Vegas. This guy's like, I sold $50,000 of product this month online. I was like, oh, that sounds like a much easier way to go. So I came back, built an e-com store on Yahoo stores. Do you remember who Andy Jenkins and Brad Fallon were? Do those names ring a bell?
No, I don't. No.
Andy Jenkins and Brad Fallon had, I guess, was my first actual product that I bought. It was called Stomping the Search Engines, and it was all about how to do SEO, how to buy links. And this was, again, early days, way back when. And I did it. I got the site ranked on the first page of Google, ended up being, 2 or 3 on Google for Herbalife. I think I made like 15 or 20 grand in sales my best month. But based on the cost structure, never really made enough profit to say, oh yeah, I'm not going to live the life I want to live on 4 grand a month, right? So that's when I moved into World of Warcraft, started being an affiliate there because I had started buying Google ads for Herbalife and learned how to do pay-per-click. Do you know who Travis Sago is?
I don't. Maybe, you know what? I've heard of the name.
Travis, Ryan Moran, you know who Ryan is. He does capitalism now. The 3 of us and a bunch of other marketers were in this membership called Wealthy Affiliates. And Wealthy Affiliate was teaching people how to be affiliate marketers, making review pages, building email lists, et cetera, et cetera. So we all kind of got started in the same way. And I chose the World of Warcraft niche for whatever reason, built my review pages and started getting sales. Like same stuff we do now, just very basic and without all the hoops and rules that everybody has to do now because of all the affiliates, right? Google's changed the rules all the time and landing page quality and all this stuff, right? So I thought I was doing great. I think I made like 5 grand a month in profit, 6 grand as the affiliate. I was the guy's best affiliate that promoted a product called Derek's Gold Guide. Then asked him, I was like, Derek, how did you do this month? He said, oh, I made 50 grand. And I was like, oh shit, I'm on the wrong side of the table, right? Because I'm promoting his product. He owns it. And he's got all the affiliates promoting for him. I was like, okay, guess I got to own an offer. So I partnered up with some guys. We made our own offer. We did World of Warcraft. That was when I went kind of full time into online marketing, which was like 2007. I had like $5,000 in savings. I had a fuck all plan for how I was going to make it work. I was like, oh, I don't know if you remember, article writing was a thing at one point. Like you could make money writing a bunch of articles. And I was like, okay, I'm going to work on this. And if I can't, then I'll write articles. And that's how I got started. And the offer took off, and it's been a trajectory since then, and launched another Warcraft guide. Then we got into the solar panel space because that was doing well. Created our own videos, our own product. My dad was a electrician, so he recorded videos. We were one of the first ones to actually have live videos of stuff being made and how you do it and all the things. Turn it into a membership. Like all the stuff that I use now is what I learned through all this process, right? So that was our first like big offer. And that was also the first offer that blew up in the sense of a bad way. It blew up good, lots of traffic, lots of sales, lots of money. Also blew up bad. Didn't take care of customer support, didn't work on chargebacks, all the things that most marketers hate dealing with, right? ClickBank shut off Visa, shut off MasterCard, and then it basically died. I had started Primal in 2012, thought we were making money. We were running everything on a spreadsheet. You know, this was before Google Docs and all the stuff, running on a spreadsheet, thought we were making money, thought we had our numbers dialed in. We didn't. When everything finally got tallied up, I think I was like 500,000 upside down in like what I spent versus what we brought in. I had been working with a guy named David who had CPA style offers on the networks. He's like, I don't want to run it through network. I want to run our own traffic. So I had hired somebody to run traffic, and we took that offer with David from nothing to 20 million in 1 year. It was old style, trial to force continuity, right? Again, everything blew up quickly, but it also blew up badly because not enough customer support to support it, not enough chargeback mitigation, shipping issues, et cetera, right? So that was the second time I was like, oh shit, the only thing worse than not growing at all is growing too fast. And so finally took that and was a little bit more measured in how we grew Primal. Primal still grew very quickly. We went from like nothing to 30 million in 4 years, I think. And we've, it's still around today. We're still growing. We're still launching offers. And you were asking about USS. That was our tactical business that I launched in 2013. And same kind of model. It's information or physical product on the front end tied into a continuity. We just run acquisition traffic, make sure our numbers are correct, and just build that base and then manage the business, right? Because the marketing and the offer, as you know, you got to have it working to get customers, but that's just the start. Like there's everything else that has to be done. So then in 2018, I had built for Primal and Survival the entire infrastructure, the call center and inbound call center support, the shipping, all of that in-house because I couldn't get other people to do it the way I wanted it done. And so we did it internally. And then in 2018, I was like, why don't I start selling this to other marketers? Because this is what I needed when I was getting started, right? A one-stop location, one-stop shop that I could have everything handled and plug in my offers into and just get it done. So that's what now is 10X Systems. That's our fulfillment call center. Chase does outbound calling, which you're aware of. He has built that into a monster business as well. I think we're on track right now for 13 million this year in sales, like total sales through the outbound call center.
Yep.
And then we get a percentage of that as our revenue, et cetera, and et cetera, et cetera. You know how it works.
But that's for your own products also, or just is everything, right?
It's our customers, our stuff, everything. Yes.
Okay.
And he built, I got to give Chase major pride. He built that from scratch in 2.5 years. And I think we're on track. The plan is to double the team from now to the end of the year. I think we have 30 agents and he's looking to make that 60 by the end of the year. So all those pieces, and then financial back office, that's another big piece marketers don't pay attention to. And then last year we opened up our manufacturing, and that's 10X Labs. So we make our own supplements now and also make supplements for our clients.
Are those custom supplements or do you already have pre-made ones?
Both. We can do white label, we can do custom. That's not something I would have started from scratch. Like, oh, I'm going to go do a manufacturing facility. It was like, look, I'm already spending 4, 5, 6 million in supplement purchases through our providers. Why not just do it ourselves? Because the payoff, right? And then take that capacity and then go sell it to other customers. And so that's how we've been growing. And anyway, so lots of little nuances in there that have really affected and impacted kind of how I do and how I look at the world and look at business. So I'm happy to talk about you want me to dig into anything or?
I do have a question. When you said you were 500,000 upside down and then the numbers weren't adding right either, like what were you spending on that's causing that? Was it a lot of the refunds, the chargebacks, or was
No, it was a combination of things. It's one of those like thank the universe or thank God or whatever your belief system is that I did that CPI offer I was telling you about. It was Garcinia offer, Garcinia and green coffee. Because I made about $300,000 from that kind of offset that $500,000 loss that kept everything working while we continued to build. The answer to your question is we were always buying traffic because, in my mind, to really get and scale any company, you have to get to a point where you can spend $1 and make $1 The reason we were upside down was because I wasn't measuring all the things that we now know to measure, right?
Mhm.
And fortunately, at the time, we were selling digital stuff. So there wasn't a lot of cost of goods, but we just weren't factoring all the things in, right? Like refunds, chargebacks. We weren't measuring our cart values correctly. And so we thought we were going in the right direction. But in fact, every sale we acquired was actually not. Because I didn't have the systems in place and didn't have everything right, it just accumulated over time until it finally got reconciled. And it was like, oh crap, I'm, $500,000 upside down. So it was just buying the business, buying the customer acquisition that most of that spend was. So once we figured it out, okay, we got new CPA targets. The deal. How do you increase cart value, lifetime value, et cetera, and build it in a way so that when you acquire a customer, you're actually making money.
I think that's important. A lot of people don't know that. They're like, they don't have a strong back end. They don't have that phone team. They don't have the email. They don't realize some people are breaking even day one, or not even losing money day one and making it back in like 15, 30 days. But they have to have that strong back end to make it back. And they're competing against people with ads that are, spending more than you, but running at a lower ROI and making it back in the end. You're competing against all that, and they're not factoring all that in. It's crazy.
100%. You take the same ad, same VSL, same everything, and put it on a better business model, you're gonna 10x the business just with that, right? As opposed to, oh, like you're saying, I need to convert better so I can make $2 on every front end offer as opposed to losing 2 or 20 or whatever, right? And a lot of guys come in the space, like you said, thinking, oh, I'm going to break even on the front end. That's great. If I can break even and acquire customers, you're winning all day long, right? If you can't, you have to have some float, right? And I also have seen people really mess it up because they're like, oh, we're going to lose $20 and we'll make it up on the back end. They have no data, they have no proof. All they have is a thought that it's going to work. And as you know, how many offers did you launch actually work? Like 1 out of 10, 2 out of
Yeah.
10, 3 out of 10 if you're really good, right? All that applies on the back end too, right? Like we launched a high ticket back end. I mean, I would argue we know what we're doing at this point, right? We've done it for 10 years. I got a team of very good marketers. It flopped out of the gate. It flopped. Does it mean it won't work? No, but it just didn't work right away. And so now it has to be iterated. It has to be worked on. And that's just part of the game. And so guys, what I'm saying is that, they think, oh, I'll just make it up. No, you don't make it up until you know how to make it up. It's kind of like the chicken and the egg. You can't get the data unless you get the customers to see what's going to happen. And you can't get the customers unless you can have the data. And so you do need a little bit of float, but you got to be smart about it, right? You don't need to spend $100,000. Go spend 10 grand, spend 20 grand, see what happens.
You mentioned about, transitioning from a real business from an offer, right? The difference between a business and an offer. And I think a lot of people get that confused. You want to tell us about that? Like the difference between the offer and a business, like you were saying, the model?
Absolutely. I mean, I think first off, like part of the challenge of our industry is that it's very entrepreneurial driven. Not that it's bad, right? But when I say entrepreneurial driven, like people that come into the space, and especially if they're coming in from the affiliate side or how to make money online side, even the e-com, they look at it like a business opportunity, right? Which is a very different perspective. Like, oh, I'm going to go make a ton of money, and then you find out, oh shit, it's not that easy. If
Yeah.
you come in learning about how to buy traffic as an affiliate and send it to somebody else's offer, well, that doesn't work. Okay, so then you learn about email marketing, and then you learn about copywriting, and then you realize, oh, wait a second, like it's like everything else, you got to be good at it, right? And so I think that part of the challenge with the industry is you got a lot of people that come in thinking that it's supposed to be easy or that it will be easy or that it's magical. And it's not. It's like everything else. You get good over time. You got to put in your hours just like every other skill. But with that concept is the digital nomad idea. You can take your laptop, travel the world, make 100K, 200, a million a year, whatever it is, live the life. But there are limitations to that dynamic that make it hard to grow a business. And that entrepreneurial mindset and attitude is basically fuck big business. They don't know what they're doing. They're stupid. Like, oh, it's lean and nimble and all the things. On one side of the equation, big business will get trounced by scrappy, fast moving, fast implementing entrepreneurs. But on the other side, big business will crush every entrepreneur because they know how to structure the company, they know how to run the people, they know how to invest the money and look at it in terms of like, okay, this is an investment, it's going to pay back over a certain period of time, this is the plan, we're going to execute it. And so there's a lot of structure around the business that entrepreneurs are like, screw that, I want nothing to do with it. But they're missing the fact that there's a lot of value there. And so it's finding that magical place in the middle, that intersection of the two. You do need structure. You do need systems. You do need limitations and restrictions on people and systems and finances and all the other things. But at the same time, you don't want that to crush the fast implementation that actually gets things done, right? Like the faster you fail, the faster you find out that new offer is not going to work, the faster you can rewrite it. Don't spend 6 months writing your copy. Spend 6 weeks or 6 days and run it and see what happens.
Yeah.
And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, iterate, okay? Because you spend 6 months thinking it's going to be perfect and then it's not. And now you're starting over again. So save the time and compress it. The part that really I started like kind of getting it was when I read Michael Masterson or Michael Ford, the guy, he's one of the partners in Agora. He wrote Ready, Fire, Aim. And that has been my business Bible for a long time, which is what we're talking about. Like, don't spend all your time aiming like, oh, let's get it right. Let's get it right. No, you execute and then you implement and get it right better. You don't want to spend, weeks and months creating the quote perfect plan and then it never gets executed. I'll take a crappy plan all day long that gets executed over a perfect plan.
Yeah.
And Michael was talking in that book about a business is basically a collection of products. And you figure out how to get that first product working. Okay, great. Now, how do you figure out how to make that work without you having to do it all the time? And then how do you then make that work multiple times without you having to do it all? Then you start having a business, right? Then you start having multiple offers, multiple lines, multiple products. And if one or the other gets turned off or something stops working, because as you know, it's not a matter of if it stops working, it's when it's going to stop working. They all fatigue. Everything's fatigues. You're crushing it for 6 months and then all of a sudden you can't get any sales. The market shifts, competitors come in. It's part of the game.
Yeah.
But you learn how to systematize that process, and then you have a business. And back to entrepreneurs versus big business, a lot of times entrepreneurs don't want to mess with the people. They don't want to mess with the structure. They don't want to mess with the systems because it's constricting. But you can't get to those multiple 10, 20, 30, 50, $100 million businesses without that in place. People have made 10 million, 20 million on one offer, but that's not a business, right? Because as soon as the offer goes away, the business goes away, right? And being able to build that business that creates and generates new products and offers and scales them out and manages the customers and maximizes the lifetime value, that's where I think the real asset and value is, right? Because otherwise you're just going from offer to offer to offer to offer and you're starting over every time. That's a lot of work.
As I'm hearing you, I'm thinking about what we did back then. Also there's like a mental shift of when we first started, we were in an apartment, right? Trying to set up a six-pack. We're filming in one bedroom, and then we have a little phone team in another bedroom. And our goal, we would sit there like, we need to make money. We need to make money, right? Because we're such a, entrepreneur small team. But once we started growing, our mentality was changed. It would be like, Johnson, look, you need to write this VSL. We're going to get another person to write one, but you also need to write one. We need a win guarantee. It's about supporting the families of our 100 employees, creating an offer, writing whatever, and putting it together while thinking about my customer service team, their kids, feeding them is on the line based on this. What we're doing is totally different from let's make money so I could buy another Rolex. Let's make money so I could buy a sports car, and that feeling, I think the small teams don't have. And it's that urgency of making it work. No matter what, we have to figure out, and I think when you have a big company, you have the structure you believe and you have everybody, hone in and you get trust. Totally hear what you're saying.
With size and people comes complexity, right? You got to have customer service. Okay. Well, you got to have somebody to manage that customer service people, right? Like you can't just have a bunch of agents because they need direction, they need management. Well, then you have a question, depending on how many managers, is that one manager the one that's going to give you the metrics and actually run the customer support division the way it's supposed to be run? Or do you need like a director? So as it gets bigger, you have more people and more complexity. And then somebody, you or somebody else on the management team, has to manage that director. And like, look, this is the things that I need to see. I need these metrics every week. And are we driving to these results, et cetera? You're in that dynamic where okay, I can only make so much money if I don't put the systems in place. But at the same time, I don't want to deal with the systems because it's not how I'm wired, entrepreneurially speaking. And I think if I did it again, I would do it the same way I did it because I'm a builder. I like building the stuff and the systems and the businesses. I like that. I'm an okay marketer, but I think I'm a better business person than a marketer. There's a lot of people on my team that are much better marketers than I am, much better copywriters, much better traffic people. But there are guys out there that just want to focus on the marketing. And so then it's easier to have somebody else handle the rest of it, and particularly if it's somebody that is all tied together and can handle the customer support and the fulfillment and all in one place, and let them focus on their marketing. Then they don't have to manage, because even if you go the route of outsourcing and you do it with 3 or 4 different providers, somebody still has to manage all the providers, right? Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? So my point is there's never a point where you don't have to manage the business to some degree, but there is a way, I think, to focus on what you do really well.
Yeah.
And if you're really good at copy, like that's your superstar magic sauce, then focus on copy and find somebody else that can do the other pieces that need to be done.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going to frustrate yourself and do all of the other pieces half-ass or not good enough, and then it becomes a big mess.
Yeah. Also with the growing the business, right? You know, when you first start, I know you told me this a long time ago about watch out who you partner with. Be very careful. Make sure that your partner is exactly right. You know, from our experience, I know with Six Pack, like we did grow, but there was multiple partners and one partner would get mad at the other for not doing enough or their division's not converting. Wants to travel. You know, I like traveling, but I rather get wins. Like that winning feeling of this sell converting or this offer is converting feels like a vacation to me, you know? So there was a boss that was like that and another one that wanted to travel. It just didn't align. You know,
Yeah.
tell us about that. Like picking a partner or don't pick one.
Man, I think that's a wonderful question. And I grew up listening to my dad say all these things and act certain ways. And I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to be like my dad, right? Like I'm going to be different. And like here I am at 46 and I'm freaking turning into my dad, right? Like, and everybody kind of goes through this own process as you get older. You're like, you know what? Acorns don't fall very far from the tree. And so I'm saying all that because my dad had this saying. He's like, the only ship that won't float's a partnership. And is that 100% true? No. There are some partnerships that do work. I have not had any that work, but I can tell you some of mine. But as an anecdote, my son started an e-com store. He did it with partners. He put all the money in, he funded everything, and he was going to split it 33%. Now, granted, there was no partnership agreement. There was no legality to it
Yeah.
other than a handshake agreement. Then they drop the project. They're not interested. Like you said, one person doesn't want to focus on it anymore. The other person, so then it all just kind of goes away. So my son Brody decides that he's going to pick it back up. Oh, well, guess what? When he picks it up, those partners, they want their share.
They
They
want
got
it
to get
back.
bought out. That they want it back. And I'm like, Brody, this is what happens, right? So long story short, he ends up having to basically give them money to get them to agree to not be partners anymore, which is what happens all the time. In my own personal example, in the health business, I had a partner. That partner decided at one point that they wanted to go work on something else and to keep their equity in the business and get paid, but they wanted to spend their time elsewhere. And I was like, no, that's not how it works. If you have an agreement that says you can be an owner and not be an employee, when I set up the partnership, that was never the intention. The intention was you get equity in the business because you're focused on the business, right? Because you're working in the business. Because again, I was the one that put all the money in. I took all the risk. Nope. Like if the business ever failed, I was the one eating it. Nobody else ate it, right? Like it was all my money. And that's not to say that partners didn't contribute. They did, 100%. You get to a point to where paths diverge, just like being married or having a girlfriend or a boyfriend, right? Like sometimes people want different things. And how do you deal with that? You can navigate the partnership if you're very clear up front on how the exit's going to work. So if you're coming to me and you're saying, Steve, I've got this partner. He's a perfect partner. I've heard all what you told me. I'm still going to partner with him. This is what I'm going to do. Then I would say make sure you have a very clear agreement of how the shares are valued. Like, how do you value the business? Is it valued based on what you say it's valued? Is it valued on a multiple? Do you have to go get a valuation firm and spend 10 or 15 grand for some professional valuation expert to tell you what your business, there's lots of ways to do this, and then agree to it. And then you have to agree, like, oh, can the other person just leave whenever they want? If they leave, do they have to be bought out? Like, there's different aspects that have to be considered. But what happens is we just want to execute and make money as fast as possible. So we're like, yeah, we'll deal with that later. Yeah. Later is the wrong time, particularly on partnerships. You got to figure it out up front, right? And how it's going to work. And then there's no argument, because what happens is you start getting crossways. And I know you've experienced this. Yeah. Lawyers get involved, lawsuits happen, and all of a sudden you and everybody else are spending a lot of money fighting about something that could have been decided a long time ago. And the other part, though, is like, I didn't understand this until I went through it myself. Equity is the most expensive part of the business, in the sense that in the beginning, we think that it's cheap because it's not worth anything. But in the end, as the business grows, it becomes worth a lot. So that little bit, that 10% or that 20 or that 50% that you're giving away is worth a lot over time. Now, that's assuming the business succeeds. But if you're dedicated and focused, over time, the business is going to grow. And so that little bit that was worth nothing could be worth several $1 million 5 or 6 years, right? So that's expensive. You're better off figuring out, how can I pay this person for their skills and their contribution, and then they don't get any equity, right? That's one way to do it. Another way is to pay in what's like phantom stock. Like, they get participation in the upside, but they don't actually own anything, because if they don't own anything, then you're not fighting legally.
Oh, like a profit share, but not legal ownership.
Yeah, profit share. Yeah. They call it phantom stock. There's lots of ways to do it. You're going to be the owner of the business. You're the one taking the risk. Then you're like, I've got the final say. I make the decisions. Now, happy to share in the upside, but we're not going to argue about what the business is worth. When you're here, you get to participate. When you're not, you don't. Like, that's how it works. And it can be structured. If you have somebody that's been with you for 10 years and they want to leave, you can take some of their phantom stock and accelerate the value and give it. Like, there's stuff you can do. But what you don't want to do is be in that position where you're fighting with somebody about ownership and who gets to have the say and everything else. And that would be another thing that I'd say, is that if you're going to have a partner and you're the one bringing the partner on, you make sure you have a supermajority, meaning you get the final say. You're the one that makes the final decision. And particularly if you're the one putting the financial risk in place. Somebody's like, if they're adamant that they want to have ownership, okay, write me a check. Yeah. What's the business worth? Write me a check for the percentage that you want. That's how it works. Then you have your agreement of how they get paid back, or you buy them out. So
that's really good information. I mean, I get hit up by a lot of people. They're like, Johnson, let's partner up. Can you help me write the copy and you'll get this percentage of the company? Like, if you could afford to pay it for that copy or the VSL, whatever, just pay it, because you're not going to be happy. Yes. I would say if you could pay it, if you could afford it, just pay it, and you'll alleviate all those lawyer fees, all of that, whatever, minutes later. I want to ask you about this. I know we mentioned, you saw about, copywriters and people not fulfilling the work. Do you feel like that's like one of the biggest issues, like CRO, people are like, I'm going to help you with CRO, like conversion rates, I'm going to help you with copy. On top of that, I feel like a lot of copy gurus, they're not teaching the copywriters how to become better copywriters. A big portion of what they're teaching is how to ask for more money. And I'm like, well, if you teach them how to write really good copy, that shouldn't be a problem.
100%. I've had so many situations where it's like, we'll just say, no, it's not you, but I'm just using Johnson. Johnson says, hey, I'm the best new thing. I wrote this winner and I've got this crushing offer. And so I come to Johnson and he's like, oh, well, I'm only, $20K up front and that's it. Right. Yeah. And then it bombs. And then you're like, well, wait a second. As in anything, once the money's spent, it's very hard to get the compliance with the added work that needs to be done to get it there. You only have so many hours in the day. So you want to make as much as you can from those hours. That makes total sense, right? And the challenge you have as a writer, or anybody has as a writer, is finding somebody that's going to turn that writing into something that is repeatable income, right? So the reason they ask for 20 grand up front is because if they take a royalty deal and then the offer doesn't work or doesn't get run, then they're screwed, right? They don't make as much money because the offer's not running. On the flip side, though, if they take the money up front and then they don't deliver, now the business owner is kind of screwed, right? Because he spent the money up front And so we've had a lot of success over time, kind of a middle ground, which is, okay, I'll give you some money up front,
Yeah.
but we're going to pay you over time. And we have writers with us that have made hundreds of thousands of dollars through royalties over the years because they wrote an offer, it worked, and we have run it and scaled it, and they made a lot of money. But as you know, it doesn't happen immediately. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy. It is hard. A new business owner has no credibility, for lack of a better word, saying, look, I've built 5 different businesses and here's my track record. So you, copywriter, are likely to succeed if we work together. And vice versa. Like if the copywriter doesn't have it, then the business owner is like, well, I haven't seen you scale a bunch of offers, so why should I pay? So there's this middle ground where both parties kind of give a little bit. And
Yeah.
it's a longer term, like, hey, we think this can work. Are you willing to put in the time and energy? And what can we do to make the upside? Copywriters in general are very entrepreneurial, most of them. Some of them are just writers. And the writers, they just want to make their money and be done. You know what I mean? Like, and you've probably seen them. I want to make 15 grand a month. If I'm making 15 grand a month, that's great. You are an entrepreneurial writer, so you're willing to assume some risk. And those are different. I think what you're saying is true, that there is a disconnect between prices that are being asked and value being delivered. And nothing against copywriters or traffic people or just the industry and the teaching and the way that it's been done has been very much making people think that their skill set is the magic skill set and that nobody can live without it. And maybe in the early days, maybe that's true, but now there's so many writers, there's so many traffic people, there's so many CRO people that no one person necessarily has the magic sauce that nobody else has and can demand unless they have the track record, right? So I'll take somebody like we know in the industry, Stefan, like he's had a lot of winning offers. Does that mean his next one's going to be a winning offer? Not necessarily. But if I was going to bet on Stefan or another brand new rider, I'd certainly put my money on Stefan, right? Like you just have the track record.
Man, coming from the copy side too, because I do a little bit of both, of course. So what I would suggest is, if I was hired to write a VSL, of course I do want some percentage. I would take a little bit, maybe take a little hit in the upfront, but to ensure that it could work, I'm gonna go and turn in 3 extra leads. If this lead's not working for this VSL, you have alternate things. You know that I'm putting the effort. And beyond that, I'm writing the swipe emails. I know you're going to get some affiliates to send it out. How do I know you're going to get the right affiliate emails? What if your swipes aren't working? It's kind of like, these copywriters need to know the marketing side of it. They need to know the journey.
Correct.
Not just, oh, I'm going to write the VSL and here it goes. What happens after testing? Oh, get a new lead. What would be amazing is I turn in that VSL. I gave you 3 leads. You split test and it's like a sequential win every time. Plus the swipes are working. Man, you just put in all that little extra effort and, make sure the optimization and stuff is working. You're going to have long-term success with this client.
100%. And then the other part of it is, as you know, in the supplement space, there's only certain things you can say in your VSLs because of compliance and FDA. And so you can take an average writer who is unrestricted, let them say and promise whatever they want to say, and they probably will convert better and write a better letter than a super experienced writer that's restricted by what's allowed and not allowed, right? You know the game. You've got this gray line you got to write. And so it's people that provide a piece of the big picture don't understand how the big picture actually fits together. When I've talked to writers before, I was like, look, yes, I'm going to pay you, but then I've got to go spend 10, 20, 30, 50 grand just to see if we can get this offer working, right? So there's a lot of risk on my side. And the only way we're going to know that is to actually go spend it and see what happens. And then we're going to have to iterate. So there's some investment here that has to occur, and it's not going to be just a magic solution. I can't think of any offers that crushed it out of the gate. Like it was a process. Now, some had more life than others, and the ones that had life, you iterated and made better and you changed and you tweaked. I mean, Agora's talked about they write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite until they get it. And they've been doing this longer than anybody.
Yeah.
So
in the past, when we used to launch an offer, I would write a VSL. Our CEO would write one. He ran traffic, but he was a writer also. So he would write one, so we had 3 and each one of us would have 3 leads that connect to each one. So we're testing 9 VSL variations to ensure that one of them is going to hit. And I just don't
Yep.
think a lot of people are doing that there, or a lot of people will come up to me, hey, I want that V-Shred quiz funnel. And they don't realize they had like 16 VSLs testing. It took them 8 months.
I was just gonna say V-Shred's a perfect example. Those guys are maniacal about their traffic and their testing and their offers, and they just try and try and try and try. Those guys did not get where they are today by one magic VSL. They have worked it and reworked it and reworked it.
Yeah. I want to ask you two more things before we go. Hiring superstars. Okay. What about that? How do you do it? Let's say I was hiring a copywriter, not the best copywriter. I'm hiring a smarter person. If this person's an average, he's a good copywriter and there's a one that's amazing, but I know this guy's intelligent, he's smarter, better problem solver. I'm hiring the problem solver because not only am I getting a copywriter, eventually this guy could be like a higher level manager that could, solve the copy, solve design. What do you think about that? And also, how do you hire, like, look for superstars?
So how we hire now is different. Right now we have a system and a process. Like when somebody comes in, they get filtered by HR, and then when they have the interview, each person gets asked the same questions, no bias, right? Originally, when I started, I used top grading, and I would do some rather exhaustive interviews, going through a whole bunch of stuff and asking questions and trying to get a feel for the person. Even that way, I didn't get the best people all the time. I had a team when I started that probably got us from 1 to 2 or 3 or 4 million. Then I had another team. That team got us to about 30. That team isn't there anymore. I have a whole new team. And I'm saying that because you're going to need a certain level of person for where your business is. And you may find the best copy director that's able to run 2 offers, 3 offers, and get you to 5 or 10 million. But is that the same copy director that can run 30 different things, or a brand portfolio of stuff that needs to be managed on a very different level? Probably not. And so you have to find the best you can for what you need, and just understand that as you grow, the needs are going to change. And that they're going to change because you start having problems with somebody that was doing a great job and now they're not doing such a great job anymore. The business has outgrown their capacity to handle what needs to be handled. With all that said, what is an interview process? What is that person doing? The interviewee is selling the interviewer on all the reasons why they're the right person for the job, right? They're selling you. They're telling you all the good things and some of the bad things, and they're making it seem like they are the best choice. But you don't know until you actually go do it. You don't know if the potential partner is really great for you till you go out on a date. Did the date go well or did it not go well? You don't know if the offer works till you try it out, run some traffic. Did it work? Did it not? So it's kind of the same way with employees too. Like the only way you really know is to give them some work and see what happens. And so sometimes a contract dynamic is a good place to start. So you're not hiring them. They're not an official employee. You let them work on something. They do good. You give them another project. After they've proven that they can do it, then you have somebody that you can continue to work with. And that's kind of what I would suggest. And like, even depending on what it is, like let's say you need something designed for graphics for your offer. Okay, go to Fiverr, go to Upwork, go find 3 or 5 people, give them all the same project and see what happens. Yes, you're going to pay more. Yes, it's going to take more time, but you're going to find 1 or 2 of those that did a great job and can probably do it again. So you give them another project, you get those 2 and you keep giving them work until one of them or 2 of them become your go-to person. The only way you're going to grow is to build a team. You have to have a team. And what size that team is and what that looks like changes based on your business size and your needs. If you're just running an offer, you may have a small marketing team. You got somebody that does your front end development. If you have any back end, you got some back end development. You got somebody, responsible for building the ads and the offers and the VSLs and getting all that managed and done. Then you have somebody, potentially running traffic and or managing the traffic, right? So there's different pieces that you're doing all of, and then you start finding other people to do that as the business grows. And then your marketing team, they start running a couple offers. Okay, now you need somebody maybe overseeing that whole thing. Okay, well then who's watching how the packages are going out the door and customer support and managing all that process? And you start building as you need. And then you just have to decide, how big a business you want and how big you want that team to be. But you can't do it all yourself. You really can't. And everybody has to make that choice. Some people are going to choose less headaches and less money. And some people are going to choose, I'll take more headaches, but I want a lot more money. It's just kind of a decision that each person makes.
Yeah. All right. Last thing before we go. In the very beginning, when people had offers, some people didn't even worry about their emails. They weren't even emailing their customers, right? And now every
Yep.
offer, it's a set thing. You have to have an email team, someone running your emails. Do you think it's going to be like that with phone teams? Like the companies are all going to build their own internal phone teams? What do you think about that? Or they're always going to be contracting out?
I think the contracting out piece goes back to the same discussion that we had earlier in the sense of what are you going to choose to do as a business? Are you going to choose to run and manage it all yourself? Or are you going to choose to have plug into somebody that already does it? Do you want to build a customer support team or do you want to use somebody that's already doing it? But what's the business case for it, right? Like I did it because there was a business case for it, not just because I wanted an outbound team. I wanted to build it and offer it like I talked about with the other pieces, the fulfillment, the inbound call center, and now the manufacturing. It's a piece of the strategy of the business that I'm building, not just because, oh, they're doing an outbound team, we should do it too. Now, there are some companies that are not doing what we're doing in terms of the different services, but they have an outbound team because it makes sense for their business. Great, do it. But somebody still has to manage it. So you got to find somebody that knows how to run it. You got to have somebody doing it right. It takes the focus and effort. So all these marketers, they get into online marketing or copywriting or whatever because they don't want to talk to people. They want to do it on the computer, have somebody buy the thing from their website, email customer support, and then just like not have to mess with it, right? That's their idea. But being a writer, the best way to get the copy for anything is to actually sell somebody on it face to face and then turn that sales process into copy. Instead of trying to figure out what should I say, you just go sell it and then you take that sales process and put it in writing. There's this, oh my gosh, outbound sales is this new thing. It's not new. How do you think people got sold before there was online marketing? They all got sold face to face or on the phone. So it's a very old school method that now has got this new feel because, oh, we can take this thing, plug it into our supplement funnel or whatever, sell more stuff, and now we're making a lot of more money, right? And it's this like magic. I want to come up with an offer that is actually phone sales only, meaning I don't want to create a VSL. I want to figure out how can I drive leads to the phone floor and just let everybody close. When you start doing that, that's a different level business altogether. You don't need to build all this stuff to have a VSL and a funnel and all the stuff. You have a phone team, you figure out what your ideal customer is, you find you're going to sell something that's in the ballpark that is profitable, and you just drive as many leads as possible. I mean, that's kind of how every other business works, really. I think online marketing is a bit of an anomaly because we know how to sell through print and videos and everything else. Any kind of business that's not online marketing, they've got a sales team of some sort. It's either phone or face to face, outbound, inbound, whatever. But it's all done that way. And so I think that as more marketers catch on and realize that it's not a new fad, it's actually an old thing that needs to be implemented, I think it will change a lot of the ways that people are running their business. We're generating 200 plus average order values, right? And refunds that are like under 10%, sometimes under 5%, because you've got an affinity with the customer, you've got a good connection, you got a rapport, they trust you. And then, you do it once, you get them a result. Next time you call them, they're going to buy again, right? And that's kind of how business always has worked. We at Primal, I don't remember what the number was. It was something astronomical. When we started, we put the number on our website on our order page, and like our orders jumped by 10, 20% or something, just because we had a phone and somebody to answer. And then the other part is that as soon as we started talking to the customers, we started figuring out what wasn't working and we started fixing that. The more we talk to our customers, the more we're going to learn, the more we're going to improve our sales process. And we try so hard and we spend so much time and energy trying to figure out what they want.
Just ask them, right? Instead of looking up all
Yeah,
these
just freaking talk to
interactive.
them. People talk about, oh, what's the magic to have a really awesome offer? And I don't remember who it was, but it's not the copy. If we're sitting at a restaurant, I can write a quote offer for you on a napkin. Here's the deal. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. This is what it's going to cost. Here's my guarantee. Here's how you pay me. And if it fixes your problem and you're hot to buy, you're going to buy, right? It doesn't need to be a 50-page VSL. My point is that just talking to the customer, we learn so much about really what their pain points are, what they need, and how we can better serve them. Because I don't necessarily like picking up the phone, but sometimes when you do, you learn a lot more than scrolling through Amazon reviews.
Yeah. And I feel like people are shocked when you actually call the customers. They're actually happy to talk to you, you know? I'm like, okay, if I just bought like a Tom Brady jersey and then Tom Brady's team calls me, you know how happy I would be? I'm buying everything he has, you know?
Like, what other business do you go into that you don't have a salesperson? You go into the mall, you got people in the shop, even in retail, they're like, hey, how can I help you?
Yeah.
Yes, they're there for administrative stuff, but they're really there to assist the purchasing process. They're a salesperson.
Like the concierge, like people, they call them concierge. They're salespeople. They're trying to get you to
Correct.
like buy more things. Hey, check out the spa at the, you know, in the Vegas hotel. Check the spa out. You know, those are the nice restaurants. They're trying to sell you on all this stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I appreciate you including me and inviting me on the podcast.
It was awesome. And thanks for jumping on. And we'll
You
talk
bet. Thanks for having me.
talk soon, man.